Looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion? There's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy, and, well, you know our next guest, co-host of Fox and Friends, longtime co-host, big sports fan. He's written books on sports. Now he's got a book. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name.
Why?
And I don't know if Brian Kilmeade is allowed to write this book and market it because Old Hickory, I'll just go by that. He has been expunged from history by the Democrat Party for his alleged treatment of Native Americans. So I don't know what to do about this. You know, I want to comport with the zeitgeist. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Brian Kilmeade, author of the new book, Old Hickory and the Miracle of New Orleans, or, dare I say, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, of course, President Jackson, the hero at the Battle of New Orleans. Brian, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a war in history. Andrew Jackson's part of it, I guess, but not all of it. I mean, we're witnessing now. John Kelly, does he really know what happened in the Civil War, really? A 70-year-old four-star Marine general.
Right.
And then we're talking about Andrew Jackson. I never said he was perfect. You never said he was perfect, but he was the founder of the Democratic Party. He was the first everyman to get elected. He was the first man to go around and campaign and get the people involved. He was the first people's president who went in to take on Virginia and Massachusetts, which now we call the Swamp in Washington. So if the Democratic Party doesn't want their founder as part of their history, they can go at it. I mean, but Ronald Reagan, Harry Truman, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, pretty good presidents, all said he was the person they tried to emulate their presidency after. He was also the last one to balance the budget and wipe out the debt. The last president. So, yeah, was he perfect? No, he was a person of his times. And, man, there's a reason why he stood out.
Was the impetus to write this book in part because of the comparison to the current President Trump, in terms of, as you're talking about kind of a populist president who took the swamp by storm?
No, it's just fortuitous in that when I started writing the book 2 years ago, he wasn't even thinking of it. I don't even think no one took him serious that he was running for president. I kind of always thought he was, but I had nothing to do with it. In fact, I could not believe the similarities. You would think a businessman and, an orphan at 13, meager means, ends up a very rich guy and a two-term president. I didn't think there'd be any similarities, but there's a ton. Number one, they were both obsessed with the media. They used to rip out newspapers and make comments on them and make sure to contact the reporter to tell them how wrong they were. They were both, vilified by the establishment, both not taken seriously when they first declared. Even when he begged to get into the war and fight and get revenge on the British for killing his family, they wouldn't even they said, "Yeah, we'll get back to you. We have some generals in mind." And when they all failed and they had nowhere else to go, then they went to him. So there's a bunch of similarities. He knew it. I talked to the president about it. But, the president, some of his comments will be on the TV special that we have, Andrew Jackson, Hero Under Fire.
Okay. Well, tell us about the Miracle of New Orleans.
I mean, it's really hard to argue that this wasn't a great American story in that, the War of 1812 starts. We declare it. We really had no choice, but we're not ready. We have no real strong army. Our Navy's strong but not big enough. And we take on the world's number one economic and military power in the British. And they are more than happy to offer us some revenge. We sent our troops up north to fight the British in Canada, leaving us totally naked, and our coastal cities were all terrorized by the British and left unprotected. And it was a rout, and the ultimate was when they burned Washington to the ground, and our president barely escaped with his life. You got to think about it. Our country was almost ruined. But little by little, we always do. We correct, we adjust. And in Baltimore, we stood tall and forced the British out. Fort McHenry stood, the national anthem written. But then Major General Andrew Jackson gets involved, and he starts reeling off victories. But he knows the ultimate battle is going to be the Mississippi and New Orleans. So he rallies his men, goes on foot, obviously, goes all the way over from Mobile to New Orleans, and waits and puts together an army of 3,000, just over 3,000, outnumbered 2-1. The British land, and they fight. And as I chronicle in the book, somehow Jackson not only wins, but Jackson's troops wipe out the British in under 45 minutes.
Speaking of the book, I got to ask you about this back and forth between you and Jimmy Kimmel over apparently a book blurb. He took a shot at you on his show. You, I thought, responded quite graciously on Fox and Friends. Did you ever hear a response back from Jimmy Kimmel to your response?
Nope. No, I've never heard anything, but I expect, the weird thing is we have separate hours, Dan, so I'll never know what he does about what I said until the next day.
Right.
So I heard about that when I got up, and they're like, listen, this Jimmy Kimmel went after you last night. I watched it, and, it's really, if that happens face-to-face with somebody, you have no choice, but you end up in a physical fight with them because they called out you personally. I'm a fan of his even before anyone even liked him. I knew him when he was on Fox Sports personally. And then when he goes in his own show and no one was watching, I thought he was really good. And I used to pitch my assignment editor to go do stories on him when we used to do American Idol. So I used to go over there, and he'd bring us behind the scenes. He was great. And the reason why I called his agent is because the agent is who I knew. ABC Media Relations wanted nothing to do with Fox. So his agent used to get me the interviews, like I got Jon Stewart for that book, too. They have the same agent, and Adam Carolla since. Mm-hmm. And then to see him reverse it and say, well, I begged and I followed him around. No, we did a walk around of his studio. I begged. No, I wanted an interview with a guy at the time that was failing at late night, and I thought he was great. And we got along. He did not like the read I had to an interview off the soundbite he used, ripping a health care plan, which he found out was Chuck Schumer's head. This is not Jimmy Kimmel being the conscience of America. He's going ahead with Chuck Schumer's talking points.
Right.
And that was my point. I'm like, you're just say I'm a Democrat and I want the Obamacare to stand. Well, a lot of people hate Obamacare and are suffering under it. Did you go to bat for them? Did you go to bat for them when they lost their health care plan and their doctor and they were promised they couldn't? Did you go to bat for all those those thousands of military people that lost their lives in Iraq and have our previous president pull out, making that all seem they fought for no reason at all? I mean, where was the outrage when if he was really the conscience of America, like New Yorker magazine says he is, you would have had equal opportunity detractor.
Well,
and
I have
he
to
doesn't
tell
even
you,
approach that.
you did an amazing job handling that situation. You were calm, cool-headed, and you made him look like a fool just by telling the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm just commending you for that. That was great.
Thank you.
Always enjoy the show.
I appreciate it.
Always enjoy Fox and Friends, even though we're kind of on similarly, but we've always
We
got
watch
it on.
you. We can't hear you, but we see you.
We've got it on. And, of course, looking forward to getting a chance to read the book. Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans. Brian Kilmeade, co-host of Fox and Friends' new book. Brian, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch.